Entering the curve from the outside. One thing is quite clear, motorcycle riding means cornering. We will show you how to ride corners safely by analysing some clips that were shot during a motorcycle safety training session on the Nürburgring's Nordschleife circuit in Germany. So, have you noticed anything important so far? Have a close look at the way the rider approaches, enters and exits the curve. The first thing is that he enters the curve from the outside. The cornering, or turning in, appears to start rather late. This is called entering the curve from the outside. Have a look at the same turn seen from a different perspective. Let us have a closer look at the whole scene. Most riders tend to turn in too early. The red arrow shows, as riders quite often do, that by turning in too soon, the apex of the corner comes too early. The red pylon here shows the bike's line if the rider had followed the path of the red arrow. However, this could be harmful in real traffic, as the rider perceives the corner's characteristics and possible oncoming traffic much too late. Have you noticed how long the rider stayed outside? And reached the inside rather late? Looking at another turn, let's have a look at the details. This curve is entered from the outside. On the road, you should be sure to keep a sufficient safety distance. When cornering to the right, keep a sensible distance to the center line, and when cornering to the left, to the roadside. Keep outside as long as possible. In this phase, you will have to use your brakes only if necessary. The speed for cornering should be decided upon before beginning the turn. During the process of slowing down, one can also shift down if necessary. The choice of speed and gear depends on the radius of the curve and the motorcycle itself. Braking should be finished before entering the curve, as the motorcycle can lift up if you apply the brakes while cornering, which makes turning more difficult. However, every motorcycle rider should know that applying the brakes while cornering is possible, and all riders should get some practice at this for safety reasons. When leaning in, the motorcycle will move to the inside. You should open the throttle gently, not to go faster, but to maintain your pace and then in preparation to accelerate out of the corner. If you've done everything correctly so far, no further corrections should be necessary. Otherwise, your speed might have to be adjusted. After entering the curve, you're going to approach the apex. This is the point that is nearest to the inside of the curve. The important thing in this process is this: the apex should be delayed as much as possible to the exit of the curve. If you have a good angle of view to see the end of the curve and course of the road, you can easily decide on the appropriate speed and the best cornering line. Staying outside long and leaning in late provides some more benefits, as the following pictures show. This animation contrasts the two different ways of turning. While the rider on the red bike starts turning early, the one on the green bike remains on the outside for a longer time. Let's have a look at the result of these different cornering lines on the angle of view. Here, both vehicles are in the same place on the road. The red line shows us the view into the curve of the rider on the red bike. The surrounding development, trees and bushes impede the line of sight so that an oncoming vehicle might be perceived too late from this position. The angle of view of the rider on the green bike is considerably better, providing the important advantage of a good view around the curve and much earlier. As a result, the car can be seen much earlier. And the car driver, on the other hand, is able to see the green motorcycle earlier and adjust his line. There's no doubt that this benefit in visibility for the rider on the green motorcycle is very important in case there are other surprises. For instance, debris on the road or a broken down car, which would be harder to see for the rider on the red motorcycle. Having a good view into the curve is important for smooth cornering as well. The rider's perspective and following the correct line are important here. The right view ahead helps us to go where we want to go. The better you can see ahead and consider the path of the curve, the earlier you will successfully manage smooth and, above all, safe cornering. Let us have a further look at the cornering lines of both motorcycle riders in separate shots. Given that the red rider neither reduces his speed nor changes his lean angle while cornering, he will move more or less on a circular path, with a constant radius. As you can see, his cornering line leads him precariously close to the outside edge of his own lane and direction of the oncoming traffic. By contrast, the green rider, although he has to choose a tighter cornering line in the first part of the curve, gains an advantage in a situation where he might have to use the brakes as he is leaning in later. Likewise, he reduces the distance travelled while leaned over. After entering the curve, he takes a relatively narrow radius and then is able to change to a wider radius at the exit of the curve. In comparison with a red machine, the apex is delayed towards the corner exit. The cornering is done at a lower speed, thus making early acceleration possible. Here you can see once again both lines in a direct comparison. The rider of the red motorcycle starts leaning in early, whereas the rider on the green machine stays longer outside and, therefore, gains more space to adjust his speed while cornering. Just as we've seen before, the green rider has a much better angle of view into the corner. The big advantage of delaying the apex is the better view. It is true that the green rider has to manage a quick turn in, but as a result finds himself closer to the inner edge of the road. The red rider, on the contrary, would have to increase his lean angle at the corner exit in order to be able to tighten his radius to avoid getting too close to the oncoming traffic. The green rider also has the advantage of being able to accelerate earlier while the red rider is still leaning in. The red pilot indicates the spot most riders would have chosen to start cornering. Have a look at the apex and how far it is delayed. Once more, keep in mind, the apex is the point of a curve where you are closest to the inner edge of it. As you can see, the apex is almost at the corner exit in this shot. As late cornering is rather unfamiliar for a lot of motorcycle riders and might feel rather challenging, it is important to practice this way of riding step by step, because by instinct most riders would want to turn in much earlier. To help with practicing, cones can be positioned at the entry of the curve so that riders are forced to start turning in late. Getting used to this combination of movements, in particular the late turning in and choosing the appropriate speed at the curve's entry, requires a lot of training and experience. The following situation again reveals how easily one might collide with the oncoming traffic if one enters a turn too close to the inner edge and decided on the wrong speed when entering the curve. We very clearly see that the motorcycle stands up when the brakes are used while leaning in. In a situation like this, it is less possible to increase the lean angle that will be necessary to avoid drifting to the oncoming lane. We would like to point out and draw your attention to the fact that cornering is not a static process which develops always the same way. A variety of different road traffic situations and occurrences may require a rider to change the line, for example, in case of oncoming traffic. One has to adjust one's line depending on the given situation, if necessary by riding at reduced speed close to the inner edge of the curve. Apex delay, however, does not only provide advantages for single turns. Especially in multiple corners or sequential turns, the benefit of a delayed apex really takes effect. For multiple corners, the cornering line for each curve, for the most part, will be chosen according to what was said before. Now our choice of line after the apex becomes important. From this point on, we decide where to turn in best by having a look into the next curve. If a left-hand bend is ahead, as shown in this take, one remains outside on the right. If a right-hand curve is ahead, one stays on the left in order to be able to turn in from the outside again. This technique of delayed apex offers the opportunity to choose the next cornering line from the outside. To sum up the sequence of movements when riding curves. We approach the curve, brake before entering it, choose the correct gear to best match the road speed, and then we turn into the direction of the apex, rather late though, as we stay outside rather longer than expected and decide on the line and speed according to the given situation. Our final advice at this point: in order to ride multiple corners, you have to turn in properly. Those who still think that skillful cornering can be done by just moving their weight or butt are definitely on the wrong track. It is only deliberate and targeted steering that will lead the motorcycle exactly where you want it to go. Without a doubt, cornering, especially in real road traffic, requires taking into account many more details. For more information, we recommend the booklet The Complete Motorcyclist, Correct and Safe Motorcycle Riding, as well as the film of the same title on ifz.de. Check it out. Safe cornering is best practiced in formal safety training programs both on the road or on the racetrack. Check it out.